Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, October 31st, 2024. Happy Halloween. And ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, and each has informed me there's no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 7.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 and 3.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 4 through 7.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that brings us to our one substantive agenda item today. It's 5820 UR 117, which is the application of Superior Water, Light, and Power for authority to adjust retail, electric, gas, and water rates. Commissioner Nieto has volunteered to lead us through our first rate case of the season, so I'm going to hand it over to her so she can lead our discussion. Thank you so much for volunteering.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair Strand. Good morning, and as Chairperson Strand said, before us today is the discussion of record for Superior Water, Light, and Power Company's request to change utility rates starting in 2025. Our discussion today is being broadcast on YouTube for the convenience of the public, the applicant, and the parties involved in the proceeding. The discussion will inform a written final decision that will be posted on our website and transmitted to parties and the applicant sometime in the coming months. Overall, the request is for a 5.9% increase in revenue, or a 2.17% increase on electric, 17.11% on gas, and 17.9% increase on water. This increase request is being driven by capital additions, including a manufactured gas plant site cleanup project, gas infrastructure projects, water main replacement projects, and replacement of fleet vehicles. There are also increases in inflation, increased depreciation, and higher interest costs. Like many commission decisions, the decision before us today doesn't have only one linear path leading to the right outcome. What we'll do is we'll estimate essentially a budget or the revenues the utility would need in order to provide safe, reliable, adequate service in the test year 2025. And the inputs we use to get there may require pragmatic adjustments in order for us to get to an end result that is just and reasonable in its totality. We will then establish rate designs for electric, gas, and water services. So each commissioner might come to the table today with different adjustments, which lead to potentially a very similar overall end result as the other commissioners' adjustments do, but via a distinct pathway. That's okay, and that's why we're here to discuss in this open meeting. We're here to get to the right result and get there transparently to provide predictability and stability for the regulated utility and its customers, and to ensure fairness and that the public interest is upheld. So I do think it is important to recognize at the outset and for context that this is a small utility. It is a utility that doesn't have a lot of budget wiggle room and doesn't tend to over-earn on its authorized return because it operates on tight margins on a smaller scale. We do need to have that in mind when setting future rates at the appropriate level here. We also need to have in mind that this utility serves a portion of the state that has struggled economically and continues to do so. We heard from people at the public hearing who are struggling. We heard from people who are struggling to address their basic needs like paying for food and medicine or their utility costs. So it behooves utilities and us as regulators to remember that when making these decisions in the public interest. These are decisions that have a real impact in people's lives. Like my colleagues have said in previous discussions, as we go through our decision items, I won't bury the lead here either. I'm going to keep my selections on these decision items simple and consistent. As we go through, I will propose an overall package and revenue requirement estimate for 2025. Number one, that does include the applicant's FTE requests, again, recognizing the small size of the utility and its budget. On the other hand, I would disallow incentive comp for the same reasons the commission has disallowed it in the same circumstances in previous cases. I would treat industry dues similarly here as well, allowing historical percentages. And on the biggest single item in this case, which is the manufactured gas plant cleanup, I would take the applicant's proposal, but slightly adjust the carrying cost rate and include a condition sunsetting that rate. And finally, I'd set the ROE at 9.8. I recognize the arguments that this utility should have a higher ROE than other utilities due to the macroeconomic risk associated with its customer composition. And I also recognize arguments and analysis establishing the ROE should be set at a rate lower than 9.8. However, as we will discuss, I believe the record in this particular case supports this as the just and reasonable ROE taken together with the overall totality of what I'm proposing here. This is how I came to an end result that's fair and consistent, just and reasonable, and good for the utility and good for its customers to the fullest extent possible. And that's not to say that, in my view, this is the only way it has to be. Quite the opposite. I'm open to my colleagues' points of views on these issues and open to rebalancing the package per our discussion as it develops. A decision on any one of these issues one way might also impact a previous issue and a previous decision, and I know we all feel comfortable raising that and taking the opportunity to revisit a topic if any one of us wishes to. So just a few logistical notes as we get started here. We'll likely take a small break at some point so commission staff can rerun the numbers based on any adjustments we make. Likewise, should any of us need a break to confer with staff on a particular topic before continuing on, we'll do that. And we will be following a decision matrix that is available on the e-agenda and also available on the events page of the Public Service Commission's website. Finally, before I turn it over to my colleagues for any opening remarks, I'll thank the dedicated and professional commission staff for their great work on this case. I'd like to thank the utility for their openness and cooperation in our review, the intervening parties for bringing their perspective and helping us reach what I'm confident will be a balanced decision. And finally, I'd like to thank the passionate public and customers who participated in our process, gave public comment and testimony at the public hearings. Your voices have been heard. At this point, I'll turn it over to my colleagues for any introductory comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Nieto, for that very helpful walkthrough, not only of the process, but of also your process and your position on some of the important items that we're going to take up today. I really don't have anything else to add besides just echoing your thanks to everyone who worked so hard to get us to where we are today to help us make these decisions. A lot of work goes into these things, so thank you all for doing what you did to get us here. But just excited to get going. Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, thank you both. I want to echo the thanks to all the parties for filling out the record and giving us a lot of really good and helpful information to help guide our process to making informed decisions. And a special shout out to the staff that helped with mine and Michaela's potentially dumb questions as our first time going through this process. And so everyone was very, very helpful as we were learning the ropes. So I want to thank everyone for that.
Great, thank you. All right, so going through the decision matrix here, we're not discussing the uncontested items. So starting with issue 2, relating to the amount of water tower painting expense that should be included in the 2025 test year revenue requirement. For this issue, I would note that the water tower is on year 16 out of an average cyclical maintenance recall of 20 years. So it is too early to put this into rates. I understand why why our typical water team process is to put this into rates at this time. Most utilities that are municipal water utilities don't come back for rate cases every 2 years like Superior does. So this is typically the right time to catch this water tower. For a utility like this, I'm fine with either A, deferring and amortizing the actual expenditure over 20 years, which would be alt 2. Alternatively, I'd be fine with leaving it out and having the applicant request it in the next case, since again, it's a 16-year-old water tower. Chair Strand?
Thank you. So I'm at alternative 3 for this one, based on some of the things you said about the project timeline and that uncertainty, and also that unlike a water rate case, Superior would be back in 2 years, and we might know more about the timeline and what we want to do with this project then. So they could either bring it back up then, depending on the timeline, or ask for a deferral in a separate proceeding, when this request would be, what I think, it's probably not the right word, but more timely to describe it that way. And also, if we are at alternative 3, we do remove 45,000 from the revenue requirement. So there's a little bit of adjustment that would occur there. But I don't think alternative 2 is unreasonable, given what you said and the fact that it's very possible that we might end up there anyway. So I'm curious to hear what Commissioner Hawkins has to say about that.
Yeah, I was originally at alternative 2. I see the merits in alternative 3 as well. And the timing of Superior coming back every 2 years, I think allows for both options with alternative 3, as Chair Strand was mentioning. So, yeah, I'm fine either way there. I think both are removing the expense in the test year, so we get that, near-term modification to the revenue requirement. So, procedurally, I'm fine either way with 2 or 3.
Great. Based on that, I'd be fine with alt 3 and joining you both there. And like we said, the applicant can put this into the next rate case, and if something happens in the meantime, they can always come in and request separate treatment. Issue 3 is on the industry association dues. And as I mentioned before, I would be at alt 1, allowing the inclusion of industry dues consistent with past commission practice in the 2025 revenue requirement. I would note the commission has historically recognized the fact that activities of many different trade associations do provide benefits to customers. And in previous cases on dues discussions, the commission has found that future records could benefit from a more granular presentation and identification of the specific customer benefits associated with all of the association dues for which the applicant seeks recovery. The commission, in previous decisions, commission has found that a generic investigation into this issue isn't necessary, but would like the applicant to provide data in its data requests going forward and demonstrate specific customer benefits. We saw some of that here in the exhibit provided by Superior. I'm fine with including the dues, and I would just continue on that same in future rate cases and future initial data requests. Please provide data on the customer benefits of each of these items. Chair Strand?
Thank you. I was also at alternative 1. I think what we've done in the past makes sense, and for the reasons that you stated, I'm comfortable with doing that here as well. Thank
Great.
you.
Thanks.
And I am at alternative 1 as well. I thought the work on the part of staff to better understand some of the associations and use the percentages to sort of change the overall request made sense to me, and the justification provided by the applicant was also very useful in understanding the benefits to customers. So I'll join you both at alt 1.
Great, thank you. Issue 4 is what is the appropriate amount of advertising expenses? On this one, I was at alt 1, accepting commission staff's removal of the institutional or goodwill advertising. Chair Strand?
I was in the same place as well. Thank you.
Great. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Same for me as well. The justification for the remaining expense was really well explained, and I appreciated the thorough description of what that money goes towards. So I'll join you both.
Thank you. And issue 5 is the annual incentive plan. So we have 2 incentive compensation plans here. This is the first one. I was, as I previewed at the beginning, at Alt 3, disallowing the AIP compensation. In previous cases, the commission has found it reasonable to exclude incentive compensation costs in the revenue requirement, where the commission has found that the record in the proceeding isn't sufficient to demonstrate that the percentage tied to operational metrics provides a customer benefit. And I found that the information in this record that we had on the operational metrics was at the same level of detail as the information in those other cases where we've requested more. It's pretty high level, and it just wasn't sufficient for me on each one of those metrics to understand fully the direct benefit to customers. And I balanced a little bit my decisions on the AIP and the STIP with my decision we'll get to down the road on allowing in the FTEs as well. Therefore, I was at disallow on this one. Chair Strand?
Thank you. So for this one, I was at alternative 1, and I dug in very deeply into the information that was in the record about AIP and STIP. So in terms of past commission practice, I think, again, we tend to look at non-financial goals as being the only ones that we might consider for inclusion in the revenue requirement. And here, I think that there was fairly decent discussion regarding what this applicant calls operational and values objectives that have to do with safety and customer service, which are more reliability metrics that, in my opinion, are not financially related and do absolutely provide a customer benefit and a benefit to the employees of the utilities, especially as it relates to safety. I will submit that on the strategic goals front in the AIP plan, that those were less clear about not necessarily the financial aspect, but the full about providing a customer benefit. So I would definitely stipulate that. And then the fact, again, that, 40% of the AIP is, according to this memo that we're looking at, less than that. Non-financial. So that's why I was at alternative 1, but I'm curious to hear what Commissioner Hawkins has to say about AIP and STIP from both of you. And I'm also curious, just in general, to hear your FTE discussion based on the information we got there with head counts. So.
Sounds great. Thank you.
I was also at alternative 3 for this one. I found that the evidence that was provided for, what the benefits entail was similar to what we've received in the past and where these expenses have been disallowed. So I was agreeing with just the past practice of how we've treated that. The other, just to look ahead, I had the same position for the STIP, which is a new program. So I was trying to be consistent between those two. I think the connection to the FTE request that Commissioner Nieto raised is important to keep in mind, and so I'll have to evaluate my position there as we're considering this as well. But I was originally at disallow and likely to remain if pending the FTE discussion later on.
Great, thank you. I would stay at Alt 3, and Chair Strand, would you remain at Alt 1, or?
Yeah, I'll stay there. Thank you.
And we can put a pin in this one and circle back just pending any FTE discussion as well. That might change anybody's vote here. So issue 6 is the STIP, and for the same reasons as under the AIP discussion, I was at Alt 3, disallow. Chair Strand?
So as Commissioner Hawkins said, this is a new incentive program, and therefore I think especially when it relates to new ones that we need a lot of kind of introduction, explanation, and justification for these things. There are some similarities to the AIP program, but there are some significant differences too, including the lack of strategic goals in the STIP, like I said, And then eligibility requirements for AIP and STIP are very different. They're available to two different types of employees. And again, from what I'm seeing, the STIP percentage is 30 and the AIP percentage is 40, so there's another key difference there. I do think that the support provided for a new program like this was somewhat thin, similar to what you're saying about AIP and STIP. And just because, of my position on AIP, it doesn't mean that, this STIP should receive identical or similar treatment. So I'm okay with joining you at all three on this one, and I think you forecasted that that's where you are anyway, so. I'm not going to speak for you, I'm just saying I'm joining you there too.
Yes, thanks. As you were speaking, I thought you were reading my notes, actually. We have a lot of similar thoughts. So I also was struck by the fact that this is a new program and no new information in addition was provided. And so that was a big determination for me to land at all three.
Great, thanks to you both. Issue 7 is accrued payroll, and on this one, I was at Alt 2, disallow, and I would just note that this is about staff calculations. They're based on full-time employment. So really where this comes into play is for work done in December but paid in January, for example. This is based on the year's work and not when the cash is paid out. So past practice removes the timing differences and prevents double pay. Therefore, I was at Alt 2. Chair Strand?
I was at alternative 2 as well, thank you.
Same for me on issue 7.
Great, thank you. And issue 8, the appropriate wage percentage increase, I was at Alt 1, holding the 2025 wage increase to the inflation rate of 2.1%. Chair Strand?
Alt 1, thank you.
Thank you.
And I was at Alt 1 as well.
All right, thank you. And issue 9 is the FTE issue. As I previewed earlier, a couple of thoughts on this. First of all, I would be at Alt 3, which is do not authorize the removal of the FTEs from the applicant's headcount. So I would keep those 4 FTEs in. And there's a specific reason for this. Again, this is a small utility, and I think it's important to be cautious around budgeting, and with the disallowance of the AIP and STIP, this is an area that I thought was important to keep a little bit of additional budget flexibility in. And I think on balance, those decisions taken together do create a fair opportunity for the utility to earn the just and reasonable return that we ultimately set, which is important. I would just say here, we have to be careful in how we discuss this. I guess on the record, there's some discussion with this. I agree with Cub's discussion and its reply brief that what we're doing here is we're setting a budget. So if we set a budget that allows enough revenue for the full headcount of employees, that doesn't mean that the utility is limited to only hiring that number of employees. The utility could hire more. It could have job announcements out for more or less at the same time. It could hire fewer. Really, this is a budget item, so it's not the same as the state budget setting process where the FTEs are a fixed number, and that's how many job announcements you can have out. So just getting to some of that discussion that the utility had about how carefully and thoughtfully it approaches new job announcements, which I appreciate that careful and thoughtful approach. With that, I will stop there and turn it over to Chair Strand.
Thank you. So I am at alternative 1 or 2 on this one. I think if you look at the data request that we received regarding employment levels, which included non-FTE positions as well, so I think it's important to differentiate between those because this question is just about FTEs. Including, I think the methodology we used is accurate and consistent, so the June 2024 headcount and then recent trends. I just didn't really see the numbers to support the full 85 level having it set there. But, those things change and there's some wiggle room, so that's why I would have been comfortable with 2 as well. But again, I'm kind of curious to hear what Commissioner Hawkins has to say on this one.
Thanks, Chair Strand. I was also at alternative 1. I was struggling a bit with this utility's smaller size as well, and the fact that the positions are each in different areas, and so there's just not a lot of wiggle room administratively, I think. But overall, I came to understand and appreciate the process we have, which is you kind of demonstrate the need as the headcount grows, and then in your next request, you have that evidence available to support the higher headcount. And so with the information we've received in the record about a lot of these vacancies being longer-term vacancies, I wasn't swayed that these positions are truly needed for reliability and operation of the utility, because the utility has been operating and reliable without the positions filled. So I was at Alt 1, could be swayed, but I think for now I'll be sticking at Alt 1.
Thank you. And Chair Strand, hearing that, do you have any follow-up? And I'd be curious to know under Alt 2 what your number would have been.
I mean, it probably would have been, somewhere shockingly between 80 and 85, given, again, some of those trends in the headcounts and making sure that we're looking just at FTE numbers. But I'm comfortable staying at 1 with Commissioner Hawkins. Thank you.
Thank you. And I can join you both there at Alt 1 for this one. Thank you. Issue 10 is on cost overruns on the Hammond Avenue gas main replacement project. There were some cost overruns. They came in a number of different categories. Ultimately, on this one, I was at Alt 2, including some but not all of the overrun items. Essentially, there were 2 line items in the cost overruns that were inadvertently excluded from the applicant's budget when it applied to us for construction authority. So those were the opportunistic meter replacements or meter relocations, and then the live tapping and welding onto steel main. Those are both aspects of a project like this that are regularly included in these types of projects, and they're anticipated aspects, and it simply wasn't applied for and wasn't authorized in the construction authorization, so it's not something that was authorized and then went over budget in that sense, which is why I was at that Alt 2. I believe this entire overrun amount for the 2025 test year is $32,141 in gas revenue requirement. The exclusion of the 2 items that I'm talking about reduces that amount by a little bit over $8,000. Chair Strand?
Thank you. So I'm at alternative 1 for this one. Finally, something that I know a ton about, just kidding. Road construction and project coordination and schedule compression, the very tight window for underground construction in a place like Superior, Wisconsin. I think that Superior did as the best job that they possibly could to get this budgeted, engineered, approved, undertaken construction-wise, working with the road construction project, complying with federal pipeline safety regulations. They also were very responsive to the order points that we put into that the commission put into the original CA regarding notifying us within 30 days of the overruns, and then also following up when the project was placed in service with some better kind of budgeted versus actuals in terms of cost figures. So I was not in the position to just kind of pick and choose some of those things. I think they did a nice job of providing a breakdown by category of where those were, so that we could understand kind of the divisions of work and those itemized, what they thought it would be versus what it was. Again, I think that this project did face a lot of challenges, and I think Superior did a commendable job of dealing with all of those things and getting this done. Again, importantly, to mitigate risk and safety issues, to comply with the federal regulations, and also to work with that related road construction project. So I'm at 1 here, I think. they did a good job of what they were supposed to do.
I was also at Alt 1 on this. I did spend some time thinking about the meter relocations as being something that should have been caught originally. Learning about the process that was undertaken with having the road project delayed and then the condensed timeline, I was sympathetic that there was a lot going on. And to the chair's point, there was also really good communication on this one throughout the CA and post-CA process. So I'm fine sticking at Alt 1 on this one.
Thank you. And I can join you both on Alt 1 here.
Thank you.
All right, and so issue 11, we're getting to the discussion of the manufactured gas plant costs as part of the natural gas revenue requirement. I appreciated the applicant's proposal. So the applicant is proposing to model the treatment of these costs after a similar proposal in an NSPW docket, in which NSPW had a large balance for the cost, amortized the balance over a 10-year period, but also did some cost sharing of the carrying costs in order to balance out the impact to customers and to ratepayers. So on the first question under this, I'd be at Alt 1, amortize over 10 years. Chair Strand?
I can join you at Alt 1. That's reasonable, and I think it helps protect from rate shock. Thank you.
Thank you.
I was also at Alt 1.
Great, thank you. And then 11A is about the actual carrying costs on this, and this is where I had a few modifications. So like I said, the NSPW proposal or order that this is modeled after involved sharing of the carrying costs. As Superior isn't proposing any type of sharing in that regard. So Superior is proposing a cost rate of 4.1%, which I believe is a blended rate of their proposed short-term and long-term debt in this proceeding. So they've taken those two, blended them, come up with the 4.10, and have proposed to have those carrying costs apply throughout the amortization period. And what I would do is, first of all, modify that rate to the long-term debt rate that we authorize in this proceeding. This is a 10-year amortization and aligns better with a long-term debt rate. And then I would sunset the application of those carrying costs to a 2-year period. And I think that aligns with Superior's next rate case that we anticipate it would come in for. And at that point, perhaps the utility can provide us with a little bit more information about, if it would like to make a case for continuing some level of carrying costs for some period throughout the remaining amortization. We can hear that at that time, but I'm not comfortable authorizing a full rate for the full period without any explanation of, or without any proposal to help mitigate some of these costs for customers. So I am at Alt 2, authorize at a rate consistent with the commission's discussion.
Thank you. It was a very helpful discussion, and explanation of where they were, why, where you are, and why. Initially, I was at 3 on this one, especially given the fact that the information about the disallowance of carrying costs acting as incentives for utilities to pursue insurance carriers and responsible parties in issues like these. But I do think the precedent that you are referring to from that similar NSP case is really helpful and informative here. I also really appreciate the long-term debt rate as the carrying cost and the sunset. I probably would not be able to support that with the carrying cost without the sunset, but I think the 2-year sunset makes a lot of sense. And I think, I don't want to jump, but the long-term debt rate that we issue in this in our later decision would be about 3.62-ish, so it'd be less than the 4.1 blended rate that they're offering here.
Exactly. I think it's 3.62 or 3.65.
Okay.
When we get there, yep.
Yes, okay. Thank you. Yep, I'm absolutely comfortable with the 3.62 with the 2-year sunset. So I can join you at alternative 2. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I too appreciate the discussion, and I was a little bit torn between 1 and 2 here, but I think your plan for Alt 2 with the long term, I also believe that that's a very reasonable decision to make here. So I'll join you both at Alt 2 with the 2-year sunset and the long-term debt rate.
Commissioner, if I could just have clarification on the 2-year period in terms of, do you want it 2 years from the effective date of the order? Do you want it kind of at that December 31? What was your timing? Because it might make sense to line it up kind of with the end of the test year, so you don't, if we get the order out in November, there isn't that gap of a month. But I just wanted to clarify the 2-year period, the commencement date, or a date certain.
I had envisioned aligning it with the test year and the effective date of the order. Yep.
26?
Yes.
25, 26, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. So we'll put it, sunsets 12/31, 2026.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Issue 12 is uncontested, as is 13, 14, 15, 16, and then we are at issue 17 now, which is appropriate capital structure for the applicant in the 2025 test year. The decisions we make on the sub-issues under issue 17 will determine the appropriate capital structure. So going into issue 17A, this is setting a reasonable interest rate for the applicant's 2025 short-term borrowing. On this one, I was at Alt 1, the 4.80% in 2025. Chair Strand?
I was in the same place. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll join you both at Alt 1.
Thank you. Issue 17B is the long-term borrowing. That is the 3.62% in 2025, and that is uncontested. Issue 17C is the appropriate common equity ratio target. And on this one, I was at Alt 1, 55%. Chair Strand?
Alt 1, thank you.
I was also at Alt 1.
Great, thank you. And issue 18 is a reasonable ROE. As I mentioned earlier, I was at Alt 4 with a reasonable ROE being set at 9.8%. Noting that, again, I know there was discussion on this record that this utility, due to its size and risk, should have a higher ROE. I believe 9.8 is just and reasonable based on the record in this proceeding. I did take into account witness Young's commentary on gradualism. And I also note that all of the ROE witnesses agreed that due to the unique customer composition of this utility, macroeconomic risk of recession is a factor in discussing required investor returns and warrants consideration as an input into the ROE discussion. So for those reasons, I wouldn't be prepared today to set it below this level. And then I'd note too that I do agree with staff and CUB that it is not correct that a standard financial analysis is inapplicable in this proceeding because the company's equity isn't publicly traded, and I thought we got some valuable explanation on that issue in the record here. Chair Strand.
I can join you at Alt 4 at a 9.8. I was compelled by a lot of the same pieces of information in the record that you just mentioned. And I think that that's a reasonable ROE. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, I had a lot of similar thoughts. I was at Alt 4 originally thinking about a 9.75, given that there was a 40 basis point reduction in the last rate case, and following up with a 35 basis point reduction did seem a little too drastic to me. And again, I found the discussion in the record about the unique risks faced by this utility to be compelling. All that said, I can join you both at the 9.8 ROE.
Thank you. Great. And so now we are through the revenue requirement and finance issues. This would be a good point to take a break. Before we do that, would either of you like to go back and discuss any of the revenue requirement issues, AIP, STIP, anything like that?
I will join you guys at alt 3 for AIP.
Thank you.
I don't think we have to revisit any other aspects, though. I think we're good.
You're all good?
We're good? Commissioner Hawkins, you're good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, great. All right, we will take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back.
Let's just say 11:30.
11:30?
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right, we are back, and we will proceed to discuss the remaining items in the decision matrix, starting with issue 19. We are in electric rate issues. So issue 19 asks, what is the appropriate electric cost of service study? For this one, I was at Alt 4. I wouldn't rely on a specific electric cost of service study, and I would rely upon multiple models as usual. Chair Strand?
I was at alternative 4 as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm at Alt 4 as well.
Thank you, Commissioner Hawkins. Issue 20 is what is the appropriate electric revenue allocation? For this one, I was at Alt 3. Approve the electric revenue allocation proposed by commission staff as adjusted for final revenue requirement. Chair Strand?
I was at the same place. Thank you.
Thanks.
Same for me.
Thank you. Issue 21, what is the appropriate electric rate design? I was at Alt 2, approving the electric rate design proposed by commission staff, adjusted for final revenue requirement. Chair Strand?
I was in the exact same spot. Thank you.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Alt 2 for me as well.
Alt 2. 21A, what is the appropriate fixed customer charge for residential electric? I'm at Alt 1, accept the fixed charges for each class proposed by the applicant and presented in commission staff's offered rate design. Chair Strand?
Alternative 1.
1.
Thank you.
And I'm at 1 as well.
All right, thank you. 21B, is it reasonable for the applicant to propose a new load market pricing rate option as proposed by Enbridge? Here I'm at Alt 3, do not require the applicant to file. The applicant is voluntarily offering to do this without needing an order point, and I was fine with that. Chair Strand?
Yep, I'm in the same spot. I think it is complex, and I don't want to force it until they're ready to do it. So,
Yep, same.
Alt 3, thank you.
And Commissioner Hawkins?
Same place, appreciated the back and forth and the willingness to work on this.
Same, thank you. Now for gas rate issues. Issue 22 is the natural gas cost of service study. Again, I'm at Alt 2, do not adopt a specific model and rely on multiple models.
Alternative 2.
Same for me.
Thank you. 23, natural gas revenue allocation. I'm at Alt 2, commission staff.
Alternative 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
3 for 3.
All right.
2.
24, natural gas rate design. Alt 2, commission staff, natural gas rate design.
Alternative 2 as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
2 here.
Thank you. And the appropriate natural gas fixed customer charge, Alt 2, accepting the fixed charges proposed by staff.
Alternative 2.
2.
Thank you.
Likewise.
Thank you. All right, and we are on water rate issues. Issue 26 is uncontested. Issue 27, revenue allocation for water, I'm at Alt 1.
Alt 1.
Alt 1.
Alt 1.
As adjusted for final revenue.
Yep.
It was a small tweak.
Thank you. Issue 28 is uncontested, and issue 29, what, if any, additional action is appropriate for the commission to take based upon the evidence in the record when considering just and reasonable rates and services. And we did include a couple of items that may fall under this category, but we're not limited to these. So first of all, I would say CUB proposed changes to certain standard language used in our final decision in the tables. CUB's witness, Dr. Keim, proposed to essentially correct some labels we've been using in certain tables in our final orders. I thought that was a good catch, and I was okay with that direction going forward, starting with this order. Aside from that issue, I did have one other issue, but I'll stop here and go to you, Chair Strand, for these.
Sure, thank you. So in terms of what's before us in issue 29 specifically, so on the affordability and energy burden issues, I definitely appreciated the information that was included in the record on these topics, including the public comments that were received. And I do think that it's important for the commission to continue collaborative stakeholder discussions about them and potential solutions within the existing framework that we have now. But in the absence of any specific recommendations or actions regarding those issues, I was at alternative 2 for this, and I also do not support CUB's proposed changes to the standard order language regarding financial determination. So I was at alternative 2 for that one as well.
All right, thank you. And Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks, Commissioner Nieto. Similar to Chair Strand, really appreciated all the discussion on the energy burden and affordability issues facing the city of Superior, and definitely got a great appreciation for all of that. And again, without any specific proposals, have nothing to offer there, but definitely need to continue the conversation. The suggestion by CUB, while reviewing it, it seemed to make sense to me. I don't have enough familiarity with how we've done things historically to say that I'm fully supportive of the change without maybe getting an understanding. So I want to continue the conversation on CUB's suggestions, but I'm just not comfortable at this point to just say that I fully endorse what they're saying. So I think I have a clear understanding, but it would benefit from additional discussion. And so I'm not ready to support it, but I don't want to foreclose it in the future.
That sounds good. And I can join you both on not taking additional action, but also keeping that discussion open. If there's terminology that would be more consistent for us to correct, I'd similarly like to know that and make sure it's consistent and correct.
Yeah, I think obviously we can make changes to those things without specific direction or affirmative votes on this issue. And I do agree with both of you that it's important to talk through them and understand the ramifications and other impacts or things that to consider when we're taking that kind of view and making those sort of changes. But again, we don't have to do it through this directive. So I think we should keep it open, keep the conversation open without.
That sounds good. And the other item that I had was an item that came up in the record. It came up in the public hearings in testimony, and Superior responded to it in briefs. And that is comments about water service lines that contain lead. Thank you for the testimony provided and for Superior's response. I would just make a couple of notes on this discussion. The Commission's position on lead lines is the same as public health officials around the world. There are no safe levels of lead in drinking water. There is funding available through the Safe Drinking Water Loan Program to communities, but in this case, this utility can't access the funds in that program. They're not an eligible participant. And while water quality is critical to the provision of safe drinking water, we don't directly regulate it here at the PSC. I would say it is paramount that utilities and communities in Wisconsin work diligently to remove and replace lead service lines. And I would ask, not as an order point, but kind of in the similar spirit of continuing a discussion, I would ask that staff and Superior work together, bring in DNR, the city of Superior, and discuss plans for replacement of any lines that contain lead.
Yep, I think that's a very reasonable approach, and I appreciate you bringing it up and discussing it.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Hawkins?
Yeah, fully support that approach as well.
Great, thank you.
So just to be clear, your thinks maybe some mentioned discussion of it, maybe in the body of the order of the importance, kind of a soft, but not an order point to direct that discussions happen.
Yep, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, and then that brings us to issue 30, the last issue in the decision matrix. Should the commission include the standard order conditions? I'm at Alt 1. Include the order conditions listed here in the decision matrix.
I was at alternative 1 as well. Thank you.
One here.
Great. Well, thanks to you both.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you. And are we ready for a motion?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Ready? Good.
Thank you.
In docket 5820 UR 117, I move we grant authority to adjust retail electric, gas, and water rates consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Do we want the order to come back to the commission?
Entirely up to
Yep.
you.
I think it's probably a good idea, and it's what we usually do, if you guys are comfortable with it.
Yep.
Okay,
I am as well.
perfect. Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, that does conclude our official business for today. Thank you again to Commissioner Nieto for graciously volunteering to take on our discussion today. She did a great job leading it, and congratulations, Commissioner Hawkins, on finishing your first rate case. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, November 7th, 2024 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, November 7, 2024 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, we're adjourned.